So everybody that wants to come to Portugal might have already moved to Portugal, are looking to get citizenship. One of the biggest things that the worries are, and I get a lot of questions about, is learning the Portuguese language. And not just that, the actual European version of Portuguese. I have a quick little story. I'm Crystal, as some of you may know, and we have the greatest language teachers, I think, on earth right here with us, and I will introduce them in a moment. But when I was just telling them that when we were in the US and we knew we were coming to Portugal, we had bought a program and it just said Portuguese. So I listened to it every day back and forth from work. Thought I knew some stuff. I learned a little bit of stuff that was helpful, but in the end realized it was Brazilian Portuguese instead of European Portuguese. And they're a little bit different. And I often hear sometimes even people from Brazil saying they think it's different and they need to kind of adjust a little bit, some words and things like that. I'm going to kick it off. Ines came up with this great program. I can't even remember how we got to you, but we've been taking lessons from Vicente. Listen,
Yeah.
funny story, people. I have been calling Vicente the American version. It's even hard for me right now to even say it. But anyways, he never corrected us in a whole year. And one time we asked him if we were saying his name right, and God bless them both. They're just so kind about it. So I really appreciate it. Maybe we can start off with Ines. Maybe you can introduce yourself. Thank you from my bottom of my heart for both of you, from Rob and I. We have learned more from you both than we did in 2 years using other people when we've used you for a year. So thank you so very much. And Ines, I'm going to turn it over to you just to put people's mind at ease a little.
Yes, sure. Thank you so much, Crystal, for having us here today. Um, yes, as you said, sometimes people start studying Portuguese and they don't know they're studying Brazilian Portuguese. Some words are totally different, but most of all, the pronunciation is very different. So it's important always when you try to learn that to make sure you are learning the European version. And I don't know, some of you probably tried to study Portuguese before. And when you study using a traditional lesson, it's just very overwhelming because you
Yeah.
have the grammar is complex. I don't know if you realized that in your previous program, Crystal, if you studied lots of verb conjugations and everything, it can be very overwhelming.
It was, let me tell you, the first teacher we had, she was a university professor, but she was on vacation where we lived in Lagos at the time, Lagos, Portugal. And she wasn't that happy, I don't think, about her temporary job, but all she did was send us home with conjugations, which blew my mind because that didn't help me at all when I'm standing in the grocery store, which looks a lot different than a US grocery store, by the way. In a good way, I have learned now it's very healthy and great. But I got so lost in the conjugations, I couldn't remember anything.
And that makes it even harder to speak because after that you are just overwhelmed and you freeze. So people end up without being able to talk. So just to give you an idea, this concept started around 5 years ago. And it started through friends of mine because I'm from Lisbon, but I grew up in the Algarve. And here in the Algarve, in the south of Portugal, there are lots of international residents. And some of them became good friends of mine. And they were taking lessons like you did and totally overwhelmed, sometimes studying for 4 years without being able to speak yet. And then they asked my help to see what I could do. And I created a different concept, and that's why we call it Portuguese. It's not Portuguese, it's like an approximation to the language to make it easier for people to speak because you don't have to be perfect when you speak. My English is not perfect, I still make some mistakes, but the whole idea is to be able to communicate.
Yeah, exactly. Everything, there's a lot of sh's at the ends of words.
Hmm?
That was a great idea.
Thank you.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about how you do your lessons? And I'll let you introduce yourself, Vicente.
That that should be me now.
Yes.
Vicent. Thank you once again as well for doing this with us. I could also talk a little bit about how I got into doing these lessons with Ines. Originally, she was doing this all by herself. So she engineered this whole thing and she was putting it in practice all by herself, dealing with groups of people at the very beginning. And eventually, she needed some help, obviously. And it was just something I would say destiny, I think. It just sort of fell into my lap through as someone that I know who is also a friend of Ines. And we just started trying this out organically and I got the feel for it. And sooner rather than later, we started working together. I started doing these lessons in a more structured environment, kind of a more private environment. We do it either in
Fun
groups of
one too.
two. Oh, good. Good feedback.
Mm.
We do it either in groups of two or private lessons. And I think that's how we've been perfecting the formula, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Ines has done a wonderful job of structuring things in a way that I think allow people from different levels, obviously, because some people who want to start lessons with us already have been taking previous lessons with other people. They're in a more advanced level, others intermediate, and others are looking to just start from scratch. So they're at the beginner level, which is the more daunting, I think, scenario. And the way we do things, I think, first of all, simplifies this whole beast that can be learning a new language, like Inish explained. And we put things a little bit more into perspective and tell people that it's all about communication, obviously building confidence, which I've also learned is a major key factor in what we do. Doing these lessons is something that I've realized has a lot to do with personal communication with different kinds of people and building their confidence to go out into the real world, so to speak, and then being able to kind of face the fears of, you know, making a mistake, not being able to get the sentence that they want to say right, being faced with more high tension situations. And I think the way we've been doing it is kind of shown its own beneficial uh, real life events. I think it's beneficial for people. We've gotten great feedback, and we usually like to keep our lessons within three main components. So obviously, getting people to try and communicate, as simple as it may be, just communication is good to break out of that fear zone of making a mistake, and then getting people acclimated slowly but surely to hearing Portuguese, because we get a lot of that feedback as well. That is the real task.
Yeah, it's
Some
kind of
people
the
have a
hardest
great
part.
grasp,
Yeah.
a lot of people have a great vocabulary already. They have a great grasp on reading Portuguese and identifying words, but then hearing different accents, different speeds, different people talking at different styles in Portuguese, so to speak, is something that always seems to be sometimes a bit more difficult. We like to keep that component also very much present, listening to audios, different people speaking Portuguese, and then putting them to the test and describing things. Describing pictures is something we've learned works really well. Getting people used to describing the simplest thing around them is already a great step into then being able to communicate and ask questions, start a conversation. So I think it's a good module that we've figured out. All credits go to Ines, obviously. And on my part, I just try to put it in practice, put it in action, and get the people acclimated with it. Yeah.
Well, it's been great because I have to give you so much credit. You have been so patient with Rob and I. So for people wouldn't know this about me, but I took 6 years of German in the US. And in class, we were pretty fluent in German. But in the US, no one really speaks German. So it wasn't until we moved to Europe and in Algarve in Lagos, a lot of British people and German people and other types of European people visit, especially in the summer, even year round. And so I would hear some of that German, and I would even today, I tell you, sometimes a word will slip out in German, but
Yeah.
it's great because it's kind of the same center of the brain. And to what you just said, we had Carnival in Sesimbra last weekend, and there were a lot of people here. And my husband's having a bit of a back problem. I ordered some food, and I had to go get the guy and walk him back. And he had been started taking English lessons, but he was talking very softly. And as we're coming in, he says something about follow, but he didn't say the whole word, and he kind of dropped it. And I said, follow. That's such a great word. You know that word. And you could see then he said it louder. And I realized that's what I've been doing. I've been speaking very softly, and because I'm afraid to make a mistake. So I just decided that I'm going to just talk the way that I talk. And people here are so nice. If some, they won't even correct you most of the time, but if you have a good friend here, they might in a nice way. And this why I will bounce it back to Ines, because there are a lot of conjugations here. Okay.
Mhm.
We have feminine, masculine. I'm going to let you talk about it, because if you think about it all at once, it blows your mind. But the way you do it makes it so much easier. So, Ines, you want to talk about that a little bit?
That's true. I will maybe share a picture here with you. And thank you so much, Vicente, for what you said. Also, I think just to, as a side note, Vicente has been great from the beginning, and you know it, Crystal. Everybody loves the lessons with him. Just to tell you that our lessons are online on Zoom. So we don't work in person. Everything is online. We have students all over Portugal, just to clarify that part. So about the grammar, I've created this picture just to show you how difficult it can be to study Portuguese, especially if you go on a traditional way. So here you can see the verb to make in English. It only has these main variations, but to make in Portuguese has many, many more variations. What happens here is when you go and study in a traditional setting, usually teachers ask you to learn these conjugations. Almost everything you see here, you have to learn. And then you might get good at reading and writing, but when it gets to speaking, people usually just freeze. And that's why they contact us, because when we are teaching people from the very beginning, we never give them all these variations, because you don't need everything to make yourself understood. I always give this example. In English, you have the verb to go. You can say go, goes, went, gone. If you are just starting to learn, why don't you say, for example, yesterday we go to the restaurant, instead of saying we went to the restaurant? Of course, it's not fully correct, but if you say yesterday we go to the restaurant, everybody will understand you. And it's much easier for you to get things going from the very beginning. So that's what we do with our students when they are starting. We just start with a very simplified way. And only when we are able to have simple conversations with them is when we slowly start to introduce the grammar. And in the end, we never teach all of these that you can see here in the board, because we don't even use this on our daily basis. Is it,
It's
Vicente?
really
You know,
great
there
because
are lots of different forms, but we, on our day to day, we don't use everything. So I don't think you have to learn it.
yeah, that's great, because we were in this trap, right? So, and being older, I mean, obviously, when you're not a child and your brain isn't sucking in all that information, When somebody puts 30 different ways to say a verb, and also, by the way, it's not the chair, the table, there's a masculine and feminine, and it gets a bit overwhelming. When we were first taking lessons, I remember you saying that just concentrate on the verb itself, right? So you can always just say the base of the verb. That makes so much sense to me. And then when you're out there, all of a sudden you start hearing some conjugations and you're like, hey, I think maybe that's the conjugation for this. And you come back and we talk about it. And sure enough, and it's like you're proud of yourself for these little jumps of joy when you get things right. So,
Yeah.
so
Those little leaps of progress, they're good.
another,
Yeah, I think it makes total sense. I really hadn't thought of how complex really our language is before I started doing these lessons.
yeah,
I think me and Ines maybe more so than myself, she shares so much in this thought is because now we have kind of unfolded our own language to be able to explain it in a simplified way to other people. Only now do we get to see just how teeny tiny things can just be so confusing and annoying, really. It is
Mm-hmm.
an annoying language. Everything is gendered, everything is a very specific thing. A lot of words are very similar to others, but they have totally different meanings. So just now, I have come to sympathize so much with people learning this language
Mm-hmm.
that really I get also really happy for my students, if I can call them my students, or the people I teach. I get happy when I see that they switch this light, they turn this light on, and these little aha moments happen where something that before they thought was just so complex and it was just such an obstacle becomes so much more simple. And
yeah.
we just take down these barriers one by one and make things as simple as possible. Like you said, Crystal, taking out or taking away that fear of conjugating verbs, I think is already such a huge step because
Huge, yeah.
then you can just make so many sentences and communicate so much without the worrying about conjugation. And then, like you said, further along the road, you will start to notice patterns here and there.
Mhm.
Oh, these conjugations, they all end in the same way. So now I can hear this better and I can recognize that this is from this verb. Things like
Mm-hmm.
that, they just become like this Rolodex of information in your head. I'm really happy whenever I get to provide those eureka moments
We
in
haven't
a
had
more
that,
simple.
but for me, honestly, I've had lots of eureka moments, to be honest. With you both. It's just been fantastic. And I will say also, you guys use something called Brainscape, and they has been so very useful to me because I don't know how you have the time to do this. They put flashcards, so you download the app and they put flashcards, but from your specific lessons. So you will always put sentences in there that we talked about in our last lesson. I'm like, how does he have time to do this? And
Mm-hmm.
it's a really fantastic tool that lets you look at it over and over and learn it better and better. Then there's a lot of other tools you have. Anesh, I know you have some more to share because in addition to that, you have the Portuguese puzzle. I'm going to let you explain all of that. And
Mm-hmm.
any other slides that you might want to share, like your website site, it's much easier for us than anything we ever did before. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Crystal. We are happy to help you. Yes, so I can show you here on our website. Basically, you can find three different ways to learn here. The first one are the lessons online on Zoom that Vicente described, and we work with three different levels: beginner, intermediate, and advanced students. I also forgot to mention that we also help people prepare for the citizenship exam. So once this initial part of conversation is good for our students, they are comfortable, it makes it much easier than to study the conjugations and perfect some things in terms of grammar. So then I prepare them and work with them to prepare for the exam, and we have been having really good results during the last years.
We've got
So
about a
this
year
is
and a half to go, girl. So we're counting on it. Can't wait.
yeah, that's right. That's right. On the website, you have a foundation course for beginners. The foundation course is a self-study course to give you just the basics and to learn a simplified formula to start speaking without the verb conjugations. I think you don't need the verb conjugations when you're starting, and you also don't need so many words. For example, in English, you have the word maybe and the word perhaps. And I always use the word maybe because that's comfortable for me. I
Right.
can read and understand the word perhaps, but I rarely use it. So, what I teach my students is to always use the words they are comfortable with. And when they are starting, if they want to say something like someone builds houses and they don't know the verb to build, they can use the verb to make instead, because to make we use for lots of different scenarios. An example to show you that you can express yourself using a very limited amount of words. And then here we also have the Portuguese puzzle. Maybe I can show you inside how it works. The Portuguese puzzle is subscription, and using this subscription, people can access 3 different levels. There are lessons for beginner, intermediate, and advanced levels, and also audio clips to practice comprehension. So, for example, when we click here on the intermediate level, you will find mini lessons that I've created where I cover the most common words for this level. And then, I don't know, if you open here a video, I don't want you to see me talking twice, but basically, I show you here the word outro. Outro in Portuguese means other or another. And then I create sentences and questions with that word to help you learn the words in a better way. Do you have another idea? She has other things to do. Just practical examples that you can use in your daily life. And then apart from that, you also have quizzes to test your knowledge and flashcards that you mentioned where people can just see, for example, the word other, think about how we say that in Portuguese, turn the card on their phone, they see the Portuguese version, and then they mark it as I know this very well, or I don't know it yet. So the cards they don't know yet will come up more times until they finally learn them. Yeah, so it's very personalized.
I love that, Nanish, and I use that a lot. And honestly, like an hour before our class, I will just go crazy on it because I want to refresh, one, but two, having the ability to say something, come up and say, I know we touched on this and I really have no idea how to say it. I can put a 1 or a 2 if I know a few words, and then it'll come up more often. Then by the end of my time doing that, I actually remember how to say it. And sometimes you can ask Vicente, I say, I'll just out of my brain, I'll say something. He says, what does this mean? I'll say a word and I'll go, I have no idea how I knew that. It's so fun. Yeah.
It's somewhere in there.
It's somewhere in there. Yeah, and it does take some time, but this has been so great for us. I think, like I said again, just getting lost in all the conjugations and wondering why a table is feminine or masculine. I mean, you know, you
It's
guys,
not our fault, Crystal.
not your fault. No, and you're not the only language that does that, by the way, right? So in
Hmm.
German, we have some of that too, and that kind of thing. But you all have been fantastic. We subscribe to everything you have. So we have the Portuguese puzzle and the website, and it really helps. Like right now, we're having to take a little break just because my husband has to have a little thing done, and so I'm able to go on and see the videos and still not lose touch with what we've been doing, and then going out and about and then just making myself say some words. It's
Mhm.
amazing to me how many times they get it, even though I'm not saying it right, and are so appreciative that I've even tried. It's just the people in Portugal are so nice. It's unbelievable.
And
It's a
probably
good.
they get surprised when you speak Portuguese. This happens with a lot of my students. Portuguese people are shocked because they are not used to see foreigners speaking Portuguese. So they get, oh my God. And one thing that I also love to do in my lessons and in the Portuguese puzzle for more advanced students is to teach them expressions that we use. For example, I've gone blank, how to say that in Portuguese. And my students start saying those things in their daily life, and Portuguese people are just shocked.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I,
Yeah.
Shocked and thrilled.
go to a little nail salon here, and it's funny because a lot of the girls there, some are Portuguese, some have moved from like Sweden or Switzerland or somewhere else. And so they also had to learn Portuguese. And so it's like this big thing where they want to learn more English and we're all helping each other. It's like kind of fun. And then I can pop some stuff out and they're like, how did you learn that? And I'm like, oh, big secret.
Nail salon and a language exchange experience at the same
Yes,
time.
exactly. And I think living in the southern part in the Algarve, so many people speak English because there's so many British people there that quite honestly, even though we were taking lessons and they were drowning us in verbs, we felt they were so much English that why do you even bother? Because
Mm.
everybody was speaking English to us. But we
Mhm.
really wanted to learn Portuguese because we want to be citizens and good citizens. And we feel that if you move to a place, you should learn the language. And it's been a testament to say that my husband, who's never learned another language before moving here, is so excited. And I remember, Vincent, that we used to dread going to lessons, and we always look forward to seeing you. It's
Oh,
always
how that
fantastic.
it turned around to that. I think that it's halfway the fact that people who move here have the desire in their heart to learn the language and really want to integrate their community wherever they choose to live in Portugal, that's half the work done already. I know that
Mhm.
it's a lot about different progress types and people learn in different ways and they need different rhythms of learning and there's always going to be peaks and valleys and sometimes you're going to plateau, sometimes you're going to feel like you're regressing, other times you're going to feel like you have this boost of energy and things are going great. It's all really part of the progress. You have to constantly keep reminding yourself, and that's why I say that it's also a lot about working and building up confidence. You have to remind yourself that this is a big challenge. It's a big thing that you're doing is learning a new language, and you're doing it because you're really passionate about being able to communicate and, like you said, Crystal, be a citizen or a good citizen, whatever that might mean. And that's why I always try to really preserve that feeling during our lessons, that kind of like positive feeling, uplifting feeling, and never really, I don't like to see the people I teach get unmotivated or get really sad or down. I like to remind them that they're doing a good thing, they're on a good track, and we're working together towards the same goal, the
It's
same common goal.
so great. And you guys are both always so positive, even though we make tons of mistakes. And it just occurred to me, this lady that we took lessons from before used to meet at a hotel bar. Okay. And so Rob and I would always say we should go early and get a drink because there's another couple there. And it was off because she knew Portuguese already and her husband did not. And so everybody was kind of at a different level and it made it
Mhm.
really hard. As a matter of fact, the group broke up really quick because nobody can learn. Then I went to this coffee shop we went to for people, and they're like people speaking fluent Portuguese standing up. There are people going, what is going on? Like it's just crazy. So again, I can't thank you enough. And is there anything else that you'd like to share? I think, Ines, you said you were going to have a little offer when we put this out.
Yes, I can, after our talk, I can send you a discount if people want to subscribe to the Portuguese puzzle. It's less than 10 euros a month, but you can have a 50% discount for a month to try it and see if you like it, if you like the concept.
I highly recommend it. I was spending more on that on another app and learning it wrong. So
Mhm.
after, a whole year and a half or something of trying to learn Portuguese and realizing that you've learned it incorrectly, it's is kind of like, okay, then you have to do a real mental reset. But you guys have been great helping us do that. I am going to put your information for the website. You can see the puzzle above our heads, but I will put all of the information and Inesh's contact information. She can, if you'd like to sign up for lessons, you might get either one of these wonderful people who we are so fortunate to work with. Thank you so much for coming on today. I think this is really going to be helpful to a lot of people.
Thank you so much, Crystal. Muito obrigada. And congratulations on your channel because I think you're doing an amazing job for people moving to Portugal or living here already. It's very, very interesting.
Got it. That means thank you very
Thank you so
much.
much.
Okay, we'll
Thank
see you
you.
all soon. And até já, which means see you soon.
Até
Até
já.
já.
Até já.